Hi guys, welcome to AP Environmental Science Video 5. It is on terrestrial biomes. So a biome is an area that has similar climate, soil, plant, and animal life. The main components of the abiotic features that are the most important are going to be your temperature and precipitation. As you can see in this graph, that's also what's there. So this is your precipitation on the y-axis, average temperature on the x. You'll notice that the coldest biome is going to be the tundra. Also has not a whole lot of precipitation, and it's going to be snow usually in that biome. Whereas most of you are probably familiar with the tropical rainforest, has a lot of rainfall and also very high temperatures. So the highest amount of rainfall up here is going to be your tropical rainforest. Desert down here, you'll notice, has very little precipitation, and the temperatures can be stretched very, very wide for a desert. So looking at parts of the world and where these deserts are, you may notice that things that usually have a lot more rain are going to be located similar along the equator. So here is your tropical rainforest, also grasslands, things like that are going to be located very close to the equator. Then you'll have your deserts are going to be about 30 degrees latitude. We'll talk about why that is later in the course. And then, of course, you have your colder biomes towards the north and the south. So here is North America. The reason I wanted to show you this is here is us over here in North Carolina. So we are the temperate deciduous forest. Please make a note of that. You should know that we are the temperate deciduous forest. That will come up at other times. So looking at some features that impact climate and impact what biome you're going to be located in. Latitude we looked at already. Another one though is altitude, how high above sea level you are. So the higher up you get, the colder it's going to be. This is why there are always why there's always snow at the top of the mountain. That's going to be a different biome than the bottom of the mountain would be. Another thing that can impact your biome is where you are on either side of a mountain. So if you are located on what we call the windward side, you're exposed to the wind first. There's a lot of moisture in that air. And then as you go up, you form clouds. And so then all your precipitation comes out right here. And then on the other side of the mountain over here is going to be, where your desert is going to be located because there's just not any moisture anymore. You have taken it all out on this side. So the opposite side, the leeward side of the mountain is going to be where there's a lot of deserts. And as you can imagine, if you're close to an ocean or a lake, a large body of water, you're going to have more stable conditions, stable temperatures, because water gains and loses heat more slowly than air. That's why when you go to the beach, the temperature range does not change nearly as much as if you're in the middle of a continent. A climatograph is simply something where we're looking at temperature and precipitation for a different biome. We will do some of these in class, and you'll manipulate and work with some of these. So you'll see that the average monthly precipitation is the bar graph down here. This is for Raleigh-Durham. And then the temperature is going to be the line going across. So this red line right here is going to be the maximum temperatures. The blue line is going to be the lower minimum. So that will be like our winter temperatures. So we'll be able to look at and analyze these different graphs. We're going to go through quickly some of the different types of biomes. A lot of this you're probably already familiar with, so just get whatever you feel like you need. For deserts, there are 3 different types: tropical, temperate, and polar. As you can imagine, tropical is the hottest, least amount of rain. Temperate is going to have seasonal temperature changes, so winter, summer, those kinds of things. And then polar is pretty much always going to be very cold. Some things about deserts and how we are degrading them. We're building cities in the middle of them. So like Las Vegas, if you've ever been there, is in the middle of a desert. They get their water piped in. It costs a lot of money. We're also farming parts of the desert and causing the soil to become more salty. Things don't grow very well in salt soils. And we're using a lot of the deserts for solar farms. Grasslands also have tropical, temperate, and polar. Again, those words very, very similar to what the desert is going on or what's happening in the desert. Grasslands typically have a little bit more rain and not quite as high temperatures as deserts. They can be between deserts and rainforest if it's the tropical one. Tropical has a wet and dry season. Your temperate is going to be more consistent temperature and precipitation, and your polar is going to be cold for pretty much all of the year. Some human impacts again on grasslands. Mainly we are converting them into cropland and for agriculture and pastures. And so we're pretty much taking them over, digging out any of the grasses that are there, and we're introducing new species as well. The chaparral is your transition boundary between grasslands and forests. So it's kind of has some shrubs and things like this, but not huge trees. So, example, the Hollywood sign down there, you can see a lot of shrubs. Fires are very common in the chaparral because it's not as wet and moist as a forest would be. Looking at the tropical rainforest, probably one you know the most about, very high rainfall and high temperatures, very high biodiversity because of this. Most of the time they're near the equator because that's where your water is going to be falling. The thing that you need to note about the tropical rainforest, and I'll circle it, draw your attention to it more, it actually has very poor, nutrient poor soil because there's so many plants growing that nutrients are just constantly being used over and over and over again. So that's a kind of trick thing that a lot of people are not aware of, and you should make note of that. Temperate deciduous forest, this is what we are. So you'll notice these pictures down here should be pretty familiar. We have a lot of rain, we have 4 seasons, we have deciduous trees that shed their leaves in the winter, and we have a lot of trees and animals, or plants and animals, but not as many as the tropical rainforest. Taiga, you've also maybe heard as boreal forest. This is an example in Alaska, what Alaska, most of Alaska is. There are long, harsh winters, short growing seasons, mostly trees that don't have flowers. They have cones and they have needle-like leaves, so they don't actually shed them in the winter. They kind of just stay like what this picture looks like. So some impacts on forests in general, we are cutting down forests, called deforestation, for our growth as we expand out in cities. We're also converting the forests to plantations to grow different things like palm oil, for example. We'll talk about that later. And we're just kind of damaging the soil from off-road vehicles and a lot of other things that we're doing. So what I need you to be able to do, you very well may have to do this on the APES test or on one of mine. You should be able to compare 2 biomes. So for example, here the chaparral and the desert. I've given you what a bad example would look like and then what a good example would look like. So a bad example of giving a description would just say, oh, the weather is different or the animals are the same. You can't say that. You have to be much more specific. So a good example, the climate is similar because it's mostly hot and dry in both biomes, or saying the climate is different because the desert is consistently dry, while the chaparral experiences dry seasons and rainy seasons. Also, there are cold deserts too, while there are not cold chaparrals. So please just be very aware that you need to be very descriptive when you're answering these types of questions. All right, thanks. Bring your questions to class.